Everyone knows coal mining is a hazardous occupation. To put it bluntly, it's a calculated trade-off between how much danger you're prepared to tolerate for how many dollars. That's true of the mine managements, who have to weigh the cost of each safety measure against potential profit. And that's true of the miners and the mining unions, who too often have come to treat safety issues cynically, as a means to boost pay packets. And that's true as well for governments, ever tempted to turn a blind eye to the rules and regulations in order to keep production and royalties turning over. All of those factors come together in the Appin file, the story of a mine explosion on the New South Wales south coast that took 14 lives. That happened 9 months ago, and last Friday Judge Gorin announced the results of his inquiry into that disaster, findings that will take some days yet to analyse. But what you're about to see is the simple human truth behind the legal language.
At one stage, July used to be a happy period. It used to be the highlights of our years together. But I'll be honest with you, I don't ever want July ever to come again. If you could take the month of July out of the calendar, I'd be happy.
The 24th of July used to be a double celebration for the Rawcliffes. It was their wedding anniversary and Bob's birthday. Last July, Bob left his birthday party to go on night shift at the Appin mine. He never came home.
At the moment, you know, I think it would be true to say most widows are living the todays, and every today is just sheer hell to get through. We may have buried them, but we're living the hell.
There's no question that mining is a risky business, but some mines are riskier than others. Appin from the beginning was known as a high-risk mine because of its extraordinary levels of methane, a very volatile, explosive gas. Now, for that reason, you'd think that safety rules would be strictly met, but that wasn't the case, and far from it. Methane gas levels regularly went above the legal limit. Safety monitors were ignored, and machinery was used without government approval. Later we'll show you that even the 7-month-long government investigation had at least one basic flaw. But the coal company, the miners and the mines department all have to share the blame. If you look closely at the mining operation at Appin, you can see that there'd been warning signs written all over it for years. In fact, just 8 days before the explosion, the Minister for Mines sent this letter to the coal company, saying that the quantities of methane give me cause for considerable concern.
I think the place was too complacent.
Bob Alchin is lucky to be alive. His shift was the next one after the explosion. Dave Edwards is even luckier. He was supposed to be in the mine that fatal night, but he took a sickie. Keith Bruin's brother was one of the men killed.
The manager requires us to be production conscious as well as safety conscious.
To these two men, that's a basic, inbuilt problem with their job. They are mine deputies. They're supposed to look after the safety, but at the same time, keep production up.
Very often a conflict does arise, yes.
What about you, Dave? I mean, do you see a conflict there?
Oh, yes, there's got to be, yeah, for sure.
Stopping of the job too frequently by the deputies will cause the deputy to be punished.
Mrs. Rawcliffe, that's a grave charge. Did that actually happen to your husband?
On one instance, yes.
What happened?
He had stopped the phase continually, on and off, on safety reasons, and the particular under-manager with whom he was working under at the time saw fit to demote him to walk in the back levels.
Safety abuses were common at Appin. A senior mines inspector told the inquiry that the main problem about the operation of the mine is that it's not been possible to meet the requirement of the Coal Mines Regulation Act. What the inspector meant was that Appin, in its normal day-to-day operations, would consistently have methane levels above the law. In fact, those levels were often twice the legal limit. Now, if that one basic rule could be broken, where did it stop? The judge says that inspectors of the mines department tolerated breaches of the Act when it came to methane levels.
Yes, that's true.
Mr. Ron Mulock is the mines minister. Why did you allow that?
I didn't allow it at all.
But they're your inspectors.
That's true. I was unaware of it until this evidence was given before the inquiry.
But your mine inspectors are, in fact, the policemen of this industry. If they are slack, the whole industry is slack.
Well, I don't think that's exactly policemen. I think a better analogy would be the auditors of the industry. The ones that are primarily responsible for the management and the conduct of the mines are the management itself.
It wasn't just the laws about methane gas that were being broken. Critical safety monitors used to measure gas levels were also frequently ignored. This is a methane safety monitor. This is attached to the coal cutting machine down in the mine. Now, this detects the amount of methane in the air. If it's too high, if it's risky, then the device automatically switches off the coal cutting machine. But because there are times when you need to turn that machine back on, quite legitimate times, such as taking the machine out of the mine quickly, you need to override this device. To do that, all you do is press that button. But this is where the abuse of the safety monitor came in, because the miners would press that button, they would override, or as they put it, put this device into defeat if they felt that the device itself was faulty, and they claimed that it often was. Or if they felt that conditions in the mine were safe enough for them to keep on working so that they could keep production up, at the same time keep their bonus up.
Some of our members, or they don't know, or they don't care, they, you know, go like mad on the production and tend to throw a lot of safety precautions to the wind.
Is that really the case? I mean, is there much corner cutting in this?
I think there is, as far as we've had problems with our own men putting monitors in defeat and everything like that, and we've got to try and police our own men at the same time.
We seem to come back to production again. I mean, why would men working in the mine deliberately distort that safety device? It's so they can keep working.
It's got to be the obvious answer.
For the bonus?
Well, people have mortgages to look after, this is true.
Now, that's an abuse of the safety monitors by the miners. But they weren't the only ones to blame. It's clear that the Department of Mines knew that this kind of thing was going on, because in January 1979 they wrote this letter to the company, tightening up the rules. In February, the company replied, giving its interpretation of those new rules and saying that unless they heard otherwise from the department, they'd go ahead on that basis. But 9 months later, in October of 1979, the department wrote back to the company saying that its interpretation was wrong. And at the same time, they apologised for their delay in getting back. That's an awful long period.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And when the inspector wrote, he says that I wish to apologise for not replying, as though there'd been an oversight, a misunderstanding.
Yes, well, I don't, you know, really consider it to be good administration.
Certainly nobody on the management side informed us at the time. We were completely in the dark on that one. As far as we were concerned, we were just working under the old ruling. But we've had an incident not so long ago where we had a monitor on a machine and it was trapping pockets of gas, which it was no good where the monitor was, and the mines department came in and gave an inspection to shift the monitor head, and they put it back where it was ineffective completely altogether. Where it was sitting, there was no way in the world it could detect gas.
So with the methane gas levels as high as they were, there was always the possibility of a spark igniting them. As the report suggests, perhaps from the ventilation system. The coal company was changing that system at the time of the explosion. Mining is such a risky business, as we keep repeating, that if the coal company wants to change something underground, such as the ventilation system, then they first have to get formal permission from the Department of Mines. But the coal company didn't do that. And as one senior inspector told the inquiry, it was obvious that there hadn't been a fan application to cover the circumstances at the time of the explosion. Now, this is a copy of that application. It was filed 2 days after the 14 men had been killed. And this is yet another example of the general slackness at the Appin mine. A slackness that included the company, the miners themselves, and even the mine department inspectors, the very men who were supposed to police the industry. Do the mines inspectors undertake spot checks?
No. I've never seen it.
Spot checks? They do carry out spot checks.
Do they arrive unannounced?
Yes, as I understand the practice.
Yes, most times
we know that the government inspector's coming, and like we pretty the place up, or we used to pretty the place up a lot for them, you know, stone dusting. The deputy used to run around like a chook with his head cut off, getting everything cleaned up and making sure everything is right for when the government inspector comes. They know which district they're coming into and everything like that, so they just make the conditions right for the government inspector. And this has been going on for years that I know of.
I would definitely be surprised that there are no spot checks, and once again I'm really amazed that this evidence has been given to you but was not placed before the inquiry.
As so often happens, it takes a disaster before people bother to have a close look at problems that should have been looked at years before. Mrs. Rawcliffe vividly remembers the day before the explosion, when her husband came home from the mine and was unusually upset.
He was greatly concerned at what was going on. I said to him, well, what exactly is going on? And he turned around and replied, and he said, sweetheart, if I was to tell you, you'd never sleep tonight. But he never came back home after that night to tell me.
Judge Alf Goran conducted the inquiry. It took 7 months and cost an estimated $1 million. But in spite of all the effort and all the money, it appears that even in the inquiry itself, there was a basic flaw. In a normal judicial inquiry, there's the judge, and then there's a bevy of lawyers. Their job is to look after anyone who's got a special interest in the inquiry. But there's also one extra lawyer. He's called the counsel assisting. It's his job to assist the judge. Now, he doesn't have any special interests at all. He's supposed to be impartial. He's supposed to be above it all. No barrow to push. That's what happens in a normal judicial inquiry. But the Appin inquiry was quite different. It was different because of this man here. His name is Mr. Brian Murray, and he's a Sydney barrister, a very experienced man. And according to the official court transcripts, Mr. Murray is here representing Mr. Mulock. He's the Minister for Mines in New South Wales. And of course, in a public inquiry like this one, the Mines Department has a very special interest in the outcome of the inquiry. But it also seemed that Mr. Murray had a second role to play. According to this same official court transcript, Mr. Murray was also the counsel assisting the judge. And in his own submission, Mr. Murray refers to himself as the counsel assisting. Even the judge refers to Mr. Murray as the counsel assisting. So it seems then, oddly enough, that Mr. Murray is wearing two hats. He was here representing the Mines Department. In that case, he had a special interest. But he was also the counsel assisting the judge. Now that seems clear enough, and that's certainly what the court records say. But according to Rod Marr, the president of the New South Wales Bar Association, it's not that clear after all.
Yes, but one mustn't worry about what labels people used. One must look at the substance of it. In my view, there was no real counsel assisting the inquiry in the traditional sense.
This is not a label. The comment from the judge is not a label. That's an official court transcript. Well, that's not a label, that's a job.
Yes, but the judge didn't say that he expected Mr. Murray to present evidence impartially.
Mr. Marr continued to insist that technically Mr. Murray wasn't really the counsel assisting the judge. But the Bar Association is still highly critical of the inquiry. In a normal inquiry, there would be counsel assisting the court.
Yes.
So this is abnormal.
This seems to me abnormal and, if I may say so, undesirable. And I should have thought the Minister was very ill-advised not to insist that a completely independent counsel was appointed to assist the inquiry, in addition to Mr. Murray assisting the Minister, at least representing the Minister.
The follow-on from that is that there was no one impartial assisting the judge.
Yes, and that I think is regrettable.
We approached both Judge Goran and Mr. Brian Murray. They declined to be interviewed.
If you want to pose the question to me, I'll put it quite simply to you, that I believe that there should be counsel assisting, and it's my intention to look very closely at that. I want to say that the department didn't set up the inquiry, I set up the inquiry.
So if the buck stops anywhere, it stopped with you?
Yes, and I did set up that inquiry in accordance with the statute under which it was proclaimed.
Well, the New South Wales Bar Association again says to us that perhaps the judge would have had all the evidence that he says he didn't have if he had someone helping him.
Yeah, well, I think that in hindsight that might well be so.
But you think in hindsight now that you should have had one?
I don't think it was my responsibility to have one.
But you said that you were in charge of the inquiry.
I'm in charge and I'm bound by the Act.
Well, whose responsibility was?
Well, I think if the judge wanted it, he could have asked for it as an assistance to him. I don't think there was any evidence that was not brought forward in relation to how the accident happened that couldn't have been, but...
Well, the judge said that he didn't have all the evidence.
He didn't have all the evidence, that's right.
But we've just finished a 7-month-long inquiry that cost goodness knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars,
yes,
all up. Isn't it a bit late now to say the judge should have had counsel assisting?
Well, I don't say it's too late at all. And everybody's now showing the same view in hindsight, that I'm agreeing with them in hindsight. So I'm not on my own.
Do you think the truth came out?
No. No.
You're very positive. Why?
One felt that somewhere along the line it was being withheld.
It would be reassuring to think that after a tragedy like Appin, it couldn't occur again. But this internal Mines Department report came into our hands while we were doing this story. And it seems that in February of this year, there was a power blackout, which led to a major breakdown of the coal mine's ventilation system. Methane gases built up to levels at least 9 times the legal limit. That explosive build-up went on for 30 hours, according to this report, before it was detected. That was February of this year, just 6 months after those men were killed in Appin.
With the amount of gas and ventilation that we have, problems that we have at the colliery, I can see no reason why we shouldn't run into the same situation again.
Many, many years ago, when he was called up as a regular soldier in order to go out to the Suez crisis, we were newly engaged at that stage. You know, he quoted a piece of poetry to me, and it went something: if I should ever die in a far-off place, remember only this of me, it should be forever England. Coincidental or not, when I got up that morning in order to get the children up to go to school and to go to work, he quoted that piece of poetry again. It was his birthday and the children had gone into his bedroom with his birthday cards and presents, and my daughter threw a pillow at him and said to him, "Don't be morbid, Dad." Why? Something was bothering him enough to cause him a lot of unhappiness. I don't know what it is. He didn't come home to tell me.
Australian Iron and Steel, which operates Appin, referred us to its parent company BHP for any comment. A BHP spokesman told us that in view of the wide-ranging nature of the legal inquiry, BHP is not able to comment at this